Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the Singapore Grand Prix race review. Now, it wasn't an absolute classic around the streets of Marina Bay, but it did still offer up a few talking points and some moments of drama as well. But before we talk too much about that and get into the post-race reaction, let's start by having a look at our race winner. It was Lewis Hamilton who converted his brilliant pole position on Saturday into victory on Sunday and moved one step closer to his 5th world title. It was a well-controlled and well-managed race, management being the key word for the front-runners during the Grand Prix, but there were a couple of hairy moments for the championship leader. The early safety car was an opportunity for Sebastian Vettel to get the jump on the Mercedes, but with the Brit nailing the restart, that never really came to anything. And later in the race, the leaders approached a scrapping Romain Grosjean and Sergei Sirotkin to lap them, which very nearly led to an opportunity for a pass for the lead. But more on that a little bit later in the video. To be perfectly frank, all in all, it was yet another great drive from Lewis Hamilton, which has delivered yet another blow to Sebastian Vettel in the title fight. This one possibly being the biggest of the lot so far this season. No, it may not be over mathematically, but 40 points is a huge gap with just 6 races to go, and it does now seem like a long way back for Sebastian Vettel. Let's have a look then at the rest of the race result, and it was Max Verstappen who came home in second place, 8.9 seconds off the lead, but a really impressive weekend from the Dutchman, which I will talk about a little bit later on. Sebastian Vettel only managed 3rd place in the end, 40 seconds off the lead of the Grand Prix, and that's all calling into question some of Ferrari's strategy calls this weekend. Valtteri Bottas finished the race in 4th place ahead of Kimi Raikkonen, with Daniel Ricciardo crossing the line in 6th place, meaning the top 6 finished in the order they started the race. It was a brilliant drive from Fernando Alonso, who finished in 7th place for McLaren, some decent pace in that car this weekend. Carlos Sainz equally as impressive in 8th place for Renault. Charles Leclerc had a great comeback drive to finish in 9th place for Sauber and pick up a couple more points. And it was Nico Hülkenberg who took the final point of the race for Renault. Marcus Ericsson, who had been solid pretty much all weekend, finished in 11th place for Sauber, just managing to hold off Stoffel van Dorn in that second McLaren. Pierre Gasly was 13th for Toro Rosso ahead of Lance Stroll in 14th for Williams. But a very disappointing day for Haas. Romain Grosjean only managed 15th place. A shockingly bad day for Sergio Perez. We'll talk about him a little bit later as well. He was only 16th despite starting 7th on the grid. Brendan Hartley crossed the line in 17th place for Toro Rosso, with Kevin Magnussen pretty much rounding off what was a miserable end to the weekend for Haas. He was 18th. And Sergei Sirotkin finished up in 19th place, with Esteban Ocon the only retirement from the Grand Prix. So, coming into the weekend, the Singapore Grand Prix was dubbed by many as a must-win race for Sebastian Vettel. However, despite Ferrari having arguably the faster car, and that they were expected to be the team to beat around Marina Bay, the German ended the race in 3rd place and dropped a further 10 points behind title rival Lewis Hamilton. Some have pointed the finger at the time he lost after hitting the wall in FP2, of course the weekend's only really representative practice session, but many are blaming the Scuderia's strategy call during the race. After a racy start from the German, which saw him overtake Max Verstappen for 2nd, Vettel looked in a solid position to try the undercut and potentially get the jump on Lewis Hamilton. However, after going for that undercut, a decision that Vettel later said over team radio was too late, the Ferrari exited the pit lane behind Sergio Perez's Force India. That, mixed with the solid pace that Hamilton was able to deliver on his in-lap, and the team choosing to use the less durable Ultrasoft tyre, left the Ferrari man not only behind the Mercedes, but eventually behind Max Verstappen as well, after the Dutchman jumped Vettel with the overcut. But despite the criticism from many about Ferrari's strategy call, Vettel has come out and defended the team's decision. The German said, "I will always defend the team. The decision we took in the race to try and be aggressive, if it works, then it's great. Today, it didn't work. It didn't work by quite a bit. So, we need to look into that. But we saw something, and that's why we went for it. Inside the car, it's difficult to keep on top of everything because you cannot see where you come out, etc. Overall, if you see the gap at the end, it was clear that we were not fast enough in the race. We need to understand why. It's largely down to how we decided to race and which tyres and for how many laps, etc. With what we did, we tried to get to first position and get ahead, but Lewis was too quick. Once you are ahead, you can control the pace around here, but we never got ahead." After a disappointing result in Monza, it was yet another frustrating end to what should have been a very good weekend for Sebastian Vettel and Ferrari. One of the other big talking points of the race was Sergio Perez's drive, which saw the Mexican involved in 2 collisions, one of which was with teammate Esteban Ocon at the very start of the Grand Prix. That has led to a huge amount of criticism being levelled at Perez by many, and was something I had my say on during last night's race reaction livestream, which, if you're interested, you can watch by clicking the card on screen. The two Force Indias came together on the exit of Turn 3 when Perez, who insists it was not intentional, made contact with his teammate, putting the Frenchman in the wall and out of the race. The stewards investigated the incident and decided that, as neither driver was, quote, wholly or predominantly at fault for the incident, they would take no further action. And speaking after the flag fell, Perez had his say on the incident. The Mexican said, "It was very unfortunate, one of those which is very hard to avoid. As I'm picking up the power, I get a clip from one car. I didn't even realise that it was Esteban. I was very sorry for that. I'm just very sorry for the day the team had in general. I wish I could have seen Esteban there or something would happen differently. A tough day for us, but this is racing." However, team boss Otmar Safnauer had more damning words for the incident and says that he will issue team orders to protect the team's best interests and to try and stop the two from coming together again. And speaking to Sky Sports, an angry Safnauer said, "It's unacceptable for them to come together like that in an area where there's no runoff room. If it's your teammate, you've got to give them room. We're back to the old rules. The team is more important than one individual. If that's what we've got to do, we'll have to take control from here. We allowed them to race on lap 1, whereas in the past we didn't let them race on lap 1. And now we can remove that." But that wasn't it for Perez. Later in the race, the Mexican was involved in a great scrap with Sergei Sirotkin. However, despite eventually appearing to get the move done, the Mexican inexplicably turned left off the racing line and hit the Williams. That move left the Force India with a left rear puncture and saw Checo get slapped with a drive-through penalty for his conduct. However, Perez, who accepted that the penalty was fair, said that he simply just closed the door too early on Sirotkin. He stated, "I closed the door earlier than I should have, so I have to double check, but I think the penalty was fair. It was hard racing. He was defending his position very hard, fighting very hard, moving a lot under braking, and a lot of lockups under braking. And then, as I was going through him, I tried to close the door, but I think he was too close. In the end, not ideal. It was very costly, but I don't think it would have changed anything on my result." So, that's what Perez and Force India have said about the incidents, but what do you think about Perez's conduct during Sunday's Grand Prix? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Before I get on to my driver of the day, I do need to cover what was a seriously impressive weekend for Max Verstappen and some of his post-race reaction. The Dutchman had suffered throughout the weekend with engine issues, but still managed to put his Red Bull on the front row of the grid and finish the Grand Prix in second place. But those gremlins with the engine very nearly cost Verstappen that podium finish, with the Dutchman saying after the Grand Prix that he almost stalled under the safety car and, as was seen during replays, almost didn't even get away after his pit stop. However, despite those problems, Verstappen could still have taken victory in Singapore. As was mentioned towards the start of the video, as the leaders approached a fighting Romain Grosjean and Sergei Sirotkin, they lost a huge amount of time, and Verstappen very nearly had the opportunity to make a move on Hamilton and the chance of the victory. Funnily enough though, speaking after the Grand Prix, Max said that he did not believe it would have been fair to pass a Mercedes at that point, and he also added that he did not think the move was worth the risk either. Verstappen briefly said, "I thought it was not fair anyway with the way he was being held up. I had an opportunity, but you can't overtake into turn 10, and I didn't want to take the risk." That aside though, and all in all, it was another very impressive weekend for Max Verstappen, and that's something he will surely be looking to build on for the rest of this season. Very quickly, there were a number of penalties handed out during and after the race. Sergei Sirotkin, who, one way or another, was involved in a few incidents during the Grand Prix, was given a 5-second time penalty for forcing Brendan Hartley off the track. The steward saying that the Russian forced Hartley off the track so much that he had to almost stop to avoid contact. Sirotkin was also handed 2 penalty points. It should also be noted that Sergio Perez was given 3 penalty points for his collision with Sergei Sirotkin, and Romain Grosjean was handed a 5-second time penalty for ignoring blue flags and received 2 penalty points as well. That taking his total to 9 out of a possible 12. The Frenchman needs to be very careful over the next few races, otherwise he could very easily end up with a race ban. Now, Max Verstappen was voted as driver of the day by the fans, and given how good he was this weekend, he absolutely deserves a shout. But so does Lewis Hamilton for the way he drove as well. However, as you all know by now, I like to have a look through the field for other standout performers, and this time round my driver of the day was Fernando Alonso. He was of course my one to watch before the race, and he drove brilliantly to go from 11th on the grid to 7th in the race and pick up McLaren's first points since Hungary. His first stint on the Ultrasofts was absolutely key to the result. He ran 38 laps on them before making the switch to the soft tyre. The Spaniard also managed to raise a few eyebrows when he set the fastest lap of the race at one point, only to see that beaten eventually by Kevin Magnussen. And perhaps that's an indication as to just how hard the front runners were really pushing. But to be fair to Alonso, he showed some very good pace all weekend and nailed the strategy to grab some crucial points for the team. A couple of honourable mentions quickly then. Charles Leclerc went from 13th to 9th and had a great scrap with Pierre Gasly at one point. Brilliant to watch. And Carlos Sainz was equally as impressive. He started 12th, of course, and ended up finishing the race in 8th place. Before I go then, let's have a quick look at the championship tables. Lewis Hamilton stays top of the Drivers' Championship with 281 points, 40 points clear of Sebastian Vettel. Kimi Raikkonen sits in 3rd place with 174 points, but just 3 clear now of Valtteri Bottas. Max Verstappen is in 5th ahead of teammate Daniel Ricciardo. Nico Hülkenberg in 7th with 53 points, but now is just 3 points clear of Fernando Alonso, the Spaniard jumping up to 8th after his impressive weekend. Kevin Magnussen is 9th for Haas on 49 points, with Sergio Perez 10th on 46. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes is still top with 452 points. Ferrari have 415 in 2nd. Red Bull remain in their comfortable 3rd spot with 274 points. Renault have extended their lead over Haas for 4th place in the championship. They've got 91 points with Haas having 76. McLaren stays 6th with 58 points with Force India in 7th. Obviously no points for them this weekend. They have 32. That's a couple more than Toro Rosso, who sits in 8th place. More points for Sauber this weekend. They are 9th. And Williams stay bottom of the championship with just 7 points. That is it then for the Singapore Grand Prix race review. But what did you think of the race on Sunday? Do you believe the championship fight is over, as so many do? And who was your driver of the day? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, unless we get any big news, I will be back live Wednesday at 7 PM UK time. So if I have missed anything in this review, don't worry. We will be going over much more in midweek live. In the meantime, though, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.